Bauer himself continues to drop truth bombs about Meghan Markle, including the fact that despite her fakery with Harry, she actually hates Africa. Look.
Meghan didn't like Africa. So
Hang on, I thought they got engaged under the African stars.
Exactly. I think that was
under African skies.
She hated the trip to South Africa.
In a glorified tent, Tim.
Yeah.
Something wild went down this week, and it kicked off before Tom Bauer's book Betrayal even touched a shelf, before a single copy hit stores. Meghan Markle's team was already reacting fast, full-on panic mode. Her spokesperson rushed out a statement calling the book, and I quote, deranged conspiracy and melodrama. They doubled down, saying Bauer had crossed the line and turned criticism into straight-up obsession.
Everything is about her. The generosity is only about, if I express philanthropic views, how to reflect on me. And I think that's fine for her, except that she's doing it at the expense of our royal family. And that, I think, is unforgivable. And that is why I've taken her on, because I'm a monarchist. I believe the monarchy is critical to Britain's survival. And everything she has done since she inveigled her way into the royal family was warned exactly what was expected of her as the Duchess, the wife of Harry, has been to undermine the very people who gave this third-rate actress credibility and status.
They even described him as someone who builds ever more elaborate theories about people he does not know. That's a heavy claim, no doubt. But here's where it flips, because that statement didn't slow Bauer down at all. It actually boosted him. The backlash sent his book shooting straight to #1 on Amazon, almost instantly.
Absolutely. I mean, the cost of living for them is enormous. I mean, the security alone, which they feel they need, must cost between $1.5 and $2 million a year. The upkeep of their home and their staff must cost at least another $2 million. And then there's the rest. So I think that they're running out of money. I mean, I've conservatively put their annual expenditure at $3 million. But for that, they'd have to earn $4 or $5 million. And it's they're running out of money because they run out of people to interest to buy their story.
And as the days rolled on, more drama kept stacking up. New financial details dropped, a Netflix situation started looking messy, a charity issue popped off, and even talk of a last-minute acting comeback started buzzing all at once. At that point, it was obvious. Meghan's team didn't shut the story down, they cracked it wide open. Now we're breaking down every single bombshell piece by piece because there's a lot to unpack here. Let's start with the headline that really lit everything up.
Of what the insiders, and Variety says they spoke to multiple insiders. The mood in the building is, we're done, says a Netflix insider on the vibe on Meghan and Harry. Their bedside manner has ruffled feathers in meetings, and lackluster ratings for shows have led to doubts that e-commerce is the best way for Netflix to stay in business with the couple.
On March 6th, 2026, Netflix officially confirmed it was ending its partnership with Meghan Markle's lifestyle brand As Ever. And this wasn't just a casual deal. Netflix had equity in it, meaning real money on the line, and they chose to walk away.
Have you just got a problem with Meghan? You don't like her very much.
No, I don't like her.
Right. Is that a problem? Are
Not
you objective?
I never like anyone I write about. I've written 29 books. I don't write about people who like me or I like them. My whole criteria for writing is not whether I like them, but these are people who are famous, seek to influence us, seek to profit from their fame, and seek in one way or other to manipulate their image as they stay up the greasy pole.
Of course, Meghan's team quickly tried to frame it as a mutual, empowering move. Her spokesperson said As Ever was ready to stand on its own, while Netflix kept things polite, saying they were glad to have been part of the journey. But when you actually look at the numbers, the story starts to hit very different, and it all ties back to Meghan's lifestyle show, With Love.
What's your response to their response to the book?
Well, I wonder what deranged melodrama is. I mean, I was very grateful for them to knock the book because it pushed the book to #1 on Amazon. But I think the idea that you can only write about people you know is just ridiculous because otherwise there'll be no history written. But more to the point, the Sussexes only will talk to people who repeat their own narrative.
Yes.
And who they can control.
Meghan launched the brand in March 2025, but things did not go the way anyone expected. Season 1 of her show didn't even crack Netflix's top 300. Not even close. Then Season 2 came in with around 2 million views and still couldn't make a dent in the charts. According to Variety, it ranked 3,436 across the platform for the first half of the year. And that's not some tiny miss, that's a major drop. And it gets worse when you look at the products tied to it.
So, of course, I don't deny at all I don't like her. I think she is a person who's done huge damage to the royal family, has been deeply, deeply inaccurate on many issues, and is of absolutely no value either to the royal family or society. But she just sucks from it, she takes from it and exploits it and profits from it.
Variety reported that Netflix was left sitting on over $10 million worth of as-ever goods, teas, baking mixes, jams, all just sitting in a warehouse, completely unsold. Then came the customer complaints, and they were not pretty. Some candles showed up without wicks. Yes, no wicks at all. The jam, people said it was watery and runny, not exactly premium quality.
Let's talk about the jam. How much of this bloody jam has she actually sold?
Very little.
Well, hang on a minute. It's been reported she's sold £27 million.
Absolutely untrue.
How do you know that?
Well, because we went to the factory that produces it.
Did you?
And went to the bottle manufacturer. And, the limitation, they never had that much. The real story, of course, is there are vast stocks of unsold jam. I mean, you mustn't believe everything that they put out.
And when Tom Bauer dug deeper, he found something unexpected. These products weren't coming from a cozy Montecito kitchen. They were traced back to bottling plants in Ohio and Illinois. The jars were sourced separately too, which doesn't exactly match the image being sold. Even the story about strawberries picked fresh from Meghan's own garden doesn't line up with how the product was actually made. That gap between the story and reality is hard to ignore. Now here's where it really shifts.
Jam, which was meant to be strawberries picked in her garden and then lovingly turned into jam on the hob in her kitchen with Lilibet looking on, in fact is a spread manufactured in Ohio, Illinois, and put into a rather attractive jar. We tracked the jar makers down too, and they sold very few of the jars to the Illinois bottling plant and manufacturing. So of course not. That is why Netflix have finally admitted or revealed this week that they are ending their relationship with her, which I predicted in my book.
The original Netflix deal from 2020 was reportedly worth around $100 million, but by August 2025, it had been downgraded to what's called a first look deal. That means Netflix can review ideas first, but there are no guaranteed payouts anymore, no big upfront checks. Everything depends on performance now, and the performance hasn't delivered. Spotify followed a similar path earlier. When that deal ended in 2023, a senior executive publicly called them fucking grifters, a comment that made serious waves at the time. And while all of this was unfolding, another layer of the story started coming out quietly. Meghan and Harry's charity filings for the Archewell Foundation, now rebranded as Archewell Philanthropies, were released for 2024.
My book now is about the last 5 years, when they're paying the price for betrayal, which is namely that they are desperate. They have lost, they haven't got any more programs lined up, they're running out of money, they've lost their credibility, they're very, very anxious to return to Britain to resume their royal titles, because revalidate them, because they are diminished as people. And so the whole book is a very different story and a new story. And I think the reason why people will be interested is because they're intrigued by the endgame about the Sussexes. I mean, divorce, desperation, debt, everything.
And the numbers raised some serious questions. In 2024, the foundation pulled in just $2.1 million in donations. That's a huge drop compared to the $13 million they brought in back in 2021. But here's the part that really stands out. Expenses and charitable grants hit $5.1 million. That leaves a gap of about $2.5 million in just 1 year. Put simply, they spent more than double what they actually received, and that's not a small issue. At the same time, the organisation has cut around 60% of its workforce. Senior staff haven't just been rotating, they've been walking out for years. At least 5 top executives have left, including James Holt, someone who had been close to Harry since before the wedding and was seen as one of the few who really understood everything behind the scenes. Now he's heading back to Britain. It doesn't stop there. Their chief communications officer, brought in during March 2025, also exited within a year. That kind of turnover raises serious questions about what's happening internally. PR crisis managers who reviewed these filings didn't hold back either.
I believe Harry is really depressed right now. And it's not just what's happening with this court cases, things with Meghan and, the monarchy, and it's just their finances. It's one of these things where you make your life worse and worse with everything that you do. And it's playing out before the whole world. And that's another part of it. I just don't know how Harry and Meghan, for that matter, can survive everything that is happening to them, because nothing is going their way. And I can only imagine what is happening behind closed doors with this couple, because the whole world is watching the complete unraveling of their lives.
One said the spending gives the impression the foundation is being used like a personal toy chest of interests, which is a sharp critique. Another warned that without real transparency, not rebrands, not polished appearances, the organisation could be heading toward what they called total failure. And then there's this detail that caught a lot of attention. The couple reported spending just 1 hour per week on foundation work. 1 hour. That number came straight from a prior tax filing, and it's hard to ignore. Now this is where Tom Bower's book takes things even further, because unlike the filings, he leans on insider accounts, people who were actually there, seeing everything unfold in real time. One example takes us to Colombia. Meghan was invited by the Colombian vice president, someone who came from real hardship, growing up in a mining village and even having to evacuate her own children due to serious threats. The invitation was meant to spotlight support for children's causes.
Meghan never intended to be a dutiful Duchess opening hospitals in Shropshire. She always intended to go back to Hollywood and use her title to pursue her career, and persuaded Harry, as I showed in this book, and they could only find happiness in California. And they went there, and undoubtedly at the beginning it was absolutely brilliant, and they earned a lot of money, but they have now reached the point at which the price of betrayal of the royal family is, as I say, the endgame, which is not rosy for them.
But according to the account, Meghan instead delivered a speech focused on how women need to find their voices, which shifted the tone of the visit in a noticeable way. She made it about herself.
Because I think they're falling stars. Okay. I think that's the whole issue, that they were globally, and they are globally known, but because of the way they behaved in the last 4 or 5 years, and as a price of betrayal, they are now, their reputation and their status and their fortunes are crumbling.
She talked about how proud she was of little Lilibet finding her voice, sitting right next to a woman whose family had faced real danger and still turned the focus back onto her own story.
I went to Colombia at the invitation of the vice president, a woman whose background extremely poor, left-wing woman who hoped that Meghan would contribute to her charities for children. And in a speech to a group of young people, she talked about how women must find their voice, how Colombian women need to actually be more powerful. And there she is sitting next to the vice president, who came up literally from an impoverished mining village, whose own children had to be sent out of Colombia because they were threatened by death. And she is completely obsessed by herself, and then goes into how she's very proud of Lilibet, her daughter, who's finding her voice. I mean, she is so self-obsessed.
That contrast didn't go unnoticed. Tom Bower summed it up in a blunt way, saying she comes across as so self-obsessed and disconnected from other people's realities that every moment, every room, every speech, every cause ends up circling back to her. Then there's Centebale, the charity Harry co-founded to support African children living with HIV and AIDS, a cause that has done real, meaningful work over the years.
It's called Forget Me Not, and it was meant to raise funds, awareness and help children, very young children in Africa suffering from HIV and AIDS.
Tom.
And it was a huge success in the ideas. They raised a lot of money. Then went a bit downhill because they had a bad director. Then they got a better director. But in the end, it was very reliant on institutional donations and Harry's polo game.
But according to Bower, Harry hadn't even visited the project in Lesotho. For the charity's chief executive, Sophie Chandauka, wasn't there to play along with image management either. She reportedly told Harry directly that his public image and ongoing criticism of the royal family were making it harder for the charity to raise funds. That kind of honesty hit hard, and it didn't land well. Things escalated fast after that.
Yeah, it looks like they're trying to make conflict between, I think, Harry and Nacho. At least I saw some advertisement about that. They're trying to create some controversy to make it exciting. I just think you're trying to create something that is not there. We know that Harry and Nacho are pretty good friends, right? So you're just trying to make something up to, prove that you can make something successful with, some drama. I think it's a bad idea. I don't understand why they would even want to revisit this whole polo thing.
The breaking point came at a polo match in Florida, where the charity was raising over £1 million. Meghan arrived late, alongside Serena Williams, and immediately made requests, including asking for champagne, even though the event was sponsored by a bourbon brand. There wasn't even an ice bucket available, so staff had to rush out to get one. Then came the moment that really turned heads. Harry's team had won, and Sophie Chandauka was supposed to present the trophy. But with cameras rolling for a Netflix project, Meghan stepped in and presented the cup herself instead.
Sophie Chandauka, the chief executive, was to present him with the cup, but the whole thing was being filmed for Meghan's Netflix series. And so she pushed Sophie Chandauka out of the way and presented the cup herself. And the video of Sophie Chandauka being maneuvered out so Meghan could step in is absolutely horrendous in terms of Meghan's PR.
Reports described the footage as uncomfortable to watch. Afterward, Harry reportedly contacted Chandauka, asking her to release a statement saying this had always been the plan and that it reflected positively on Meghan. But she refused. According to insider accounts, that refusal sparked a major reaction. Chandauka later spoke out publicly, criticizing the situation, and not long after, Harry stepped down from the charity he helped create. And here's where things take another serious turn. Bauer claims there's a growing concern behind the scenes, because for years it was said to be constitutionally impossible to remove royal titles.
Everyone was saying you couldn't take away Andrew's titles without an act of parliament and everything else. And suddenly they invented letters patent to take them away, a great constitutional fudge. I think Harry realizes that once William becomes king, he's in danger of losing his titles.
Really?
But after what happened with Prince Andrew, that assumption no longer feels so certain. And that shift has reportedly caused real unease. For years, people believed it couldn't be done. That without an act of parliament, stripping a royal of their titles was basically impossible. It was treated like a fixed rule, something locked in place. And then everything changed overnight. Letters patent were signed and Prince Andrew lost his titles just like that.
This Australian trip is already a total PR disaster before it has even began, with now headlines running throughout the mainstream media all around the world about the fact that Australians are revolting at what is being described as a pseudo-royal visit. And there is actually a signature, a petition, which now has 32,000 signatures demanding that public money isn't used. Now, what's so interesting is the Sussexes team immediately...
So that constitutional impossibility turned out to be a lot more flexible than anyone expected. And Harry knows it. According to Bauer, he's fully aware that once Prince William becomes king, which could happen sooner than many think, given King Charles's health, the same option is sitting right there.
Brief back on the record saying, oh, no, this isn't going to cost Australians anything. But the problem is, no wonder Australians are worried because they've seen what sort of grifters the Sussexes are, how they use left-wing governments to try and fund things that they do, how they've used the Colombian governments, the Nigerian governments, the Canadian governments, and are now demanding money from the British government. The thing is, people know. They know that this is a grift and the grift is up because it's not the government paying, is it? It's us.
Because William is not expected to tolerate a separate high-profile royal operation running out of California while still using royal titles. The concern is about influence, image, and control, and whether Harry and Meghan continuing to use Sussex branding for ventures, products, and paid appearances crosses a line. And here's the key detail that keeps coming up. The Sandringham Agreement, signed when they first stepped back, reportedly included clear limits around using royal status for commercial gain.
If they run out of money, they're going to monetize their royal status, as they're going to do very shortly in Australia with a £17 a head at the health farm.
Yes.
Soon she'll be advertising mayonnaise. I mean, there's a desperation buy them because they need money. Their cost of living is huge. Status means everything in Hollywood.
Bauer claims those limits have been crossed multiple times. If William decides the line has been pushed too far, the path to act is already there. The precedent has been set, and that changes everything. Now add this to the mix. The Netflix deal is done. Archewell's finances are under pressure, and paid speaking events, like appearances in Australia with high ticket prices, are becoming one of the more visible income streams. At the same time, there's a new angle developing in Hollywood. People close to Meghan are hinting that she could be planning a return to acting. Eric Roberts even said in an interview that she'll come back and blow everybody's mind. And his wife, a casting director, said, the timing feels right.
I think if Harry and Meghan in any way threaten the royal family from now on, and as they have in the past, William will be minded to do exactly the same, not only to Harry and Meghan, but also their children, because he doesn't need a rival, hostile royal family in California.
But here's the twist. Meghan herself told Variety back in 2022, "I'm done. My intention is absolutely not to return to acting." She's repeated that message more than once. So now there's a clear disconnect between what's being said around her and what she's said herself. And despite the encouragement from a few voices, Hollywood isn't exactly rushing in with major roles or big announcements right now. A moment that really turned heads happened at a recent premiere. Actor Jack Quaid was asked on camera about possibly starring alongside Meghan in an upcoming Amazon film, and his reaction said a lot. He looked completely caught off guard, like a deer in headlights, and said, "It was insane." Then, almost instantly, he shifted gears and started praising the rest of the cast. Not her, the rest of them.
Meghan is not the kind of person that wants to show up and do her homework. She is so entitled in her mindset, and that is the worst kind of way of looking at things that you can have if you want to get back into the field of acting and to really do something exceptional. This woman doesn't know discipline and humility to even show up in a way to get people to root for her. I think it will just be a disaster. Meghan is going to show up as if she should be the A-lister that is headlining a movie.
That quick pivot didn't go unnoticed. As one Hollywood insider put it, if someone has nothing good to say about a person, they'll compliment everyone else and move on. And that's exactly what Jack Quaid did in that moment. Now, you might think all the concern around Harry and Meghan is coming from critics, but this week it came from somewhere unexpected. Tina Brown, author of The Palace Papers, and someone once seen as sympathetic toward the Sussexes, dropped a strong warning in her Substack. She asked a direct question: are the Windsors underestimating the situation? And her point wasn't about welcoming Harry and Meghan back with open arms. It was the opposite. She argued the royal family hasn't fully grasped the level of risk involved, both to the institution itself, to William's future reign, and to the monarchy's global image. She pointed to the Nigeria trip as an example. The couple reportedly travelled on a private plane provided by a businessman who was later reported to be facing serious legal issues in the United States related to financial crimes.
Jack Quaid has like a deer in a headlights moment where he's like, oh God, they've asked me about Meghan. He says, it's insane, which is quite a weird way to describe it. Certainly no praise for her, but immediately wants to move the conversation on to speak about the cast members who he does like, who he does feel comfortable about.
According to her, there were no palace advisors involved and no visible due diligence, something she said echoes patterns seen in past royal controversies. But here's where opinions split. Tom Bauer doesn't agree with her suggested solution of bringing Harry and Meghan back in a limited role.
Is there a way back for Harry in regards to the royal family, his father, the king, and his brother, William?
I don't believe so. Definitely not in public with the king, which, of course, is exactly what Harry wants at the Invictus Games in Birmingham. I don't believe the king will dream of doing that, not least because there'll be riots from the Muslim population there when the Israeli competitors start turning up at the track. And secondly, I don't think William would allow it.
His view, and reportedly the view of people close to William, is that bringing them back into the fold would only create more problems, more access, more inside information, and a bigger platform. Instead, the argument is that distance is the only way to manage the situation. So after all of this, Financial pressure, media moments, public criticism, and growing tension behind the scenes. The big question now is, where does this actually leave Harry and Meghan? Tom Bower has stayed consistent across both of his books about this couple.
Her problem is she can't earn any money anymore. She made her money selling the dirt on the royal family, much of it, of course, in my view, invented, and now finds herself at an unfortunate crossroads where she can't raise money by work anymore, other than tawdry things like going to Australia and this health fund.
And in his view, betrayal isn't just another chapter, it's the endgame starting to unfold right now, in real time. Because when you break down the numbers, the pressure is serious. Just security alone is estimated to cost between $1.5 and $2 million every single year.
I think he's appalled by her. I think that he's shocked by her duplicity. I think he's shocked by her behavior. And by duplicity, I mean the fact that she pretended to want to join the royal family and be part of the team. And then what she said in the Oprah Winfrey interviews in the Netflix series. I think he is shocked that Harry was allowed, because Meghan did read the manuscript of his autobiography, say the things that they did about the private. I mean, whether William was circumcised and going, well, it was just dreadful things to put.
Then add the mortgage on the $14 million Montecito mansion, plus staff and daily expenses. Bower estimates a minimum of $3 to $4 million annually just to maintain their lifestyle. To keep that going, they need major income coming in. And right now, those streams are shrinking fast. Spotify is gone. The original Netflix deal is gone. As Ever is now standing alone, with reports of over $10 million worth of unsold products sitting in storage. Archewell is dealing with a multi-million-dollar deficit while also cutting staff. And even though there are claims of reserve funds, reportedly over $20 million,
the royal family knew long before the wedding that Meghan was going to be trouble. As I describe in the book, there was a very famous member of the establishment who every 3 or 4 weeks sat with Meghan in Kensington Palace for more than an hour, explaining to her the job of being a part of the royal family. And after the 3rd or 4th session, that person reported that she was going to be amazing trouble and didn't believe she'd stay.
That kind of money doesn't last forever at this pace. Meanwhile, one person who seems to be watching all of this very closely is Prince William. He hasn't said a word publicly. No interviews, no streaming deals, no public back and forth. Alongside Catherine, he's stayed quiet despite years of criticism, choosing what Bower describes as dignified silence, knowing anything said publicly could quickly be turned into headlines or featured elsewhere. But staying silent doesn't mean doing nothing. Because when William eventually becomes king, the conversation around titles, whether Harry and Meghan remain the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, and what titles their children hold, won't be debated in public.
About the prospect, finally, Tom Bower, of a book by Meghan herself.
Well, I think that's very real. And I think that she'll write a very, very good book. It won't be the truth, but it'll be a very good book.
Hang on, it will be Meghan's truth.
It'll be Meghan's truth.
Like this is your truth, Tom
Exactly.
Bower.
Well, no, my truth is subject to legal constraints. And the lawyers
This is
pour
what Tim and
over
I
it.
say about our own truth. All truth is subject to legal constraints.
Except hers won't be, because she'll have conversations with the Queen and other people which will be completely unverifiable and unchallengeable. And she could do, and would do, huge damage. But that is her ultimate get-out-of-jail card, our ultimate source of money.
It will come down to one thing: letters patent. One courtier put it bluntly this week: Archewell is the crown jewel of everything Harry and Meghan have tried to build since stepping away from royal life. And right now, it's running on fumes. They left Britain saying they wanted their voices heard, and for years they've pushed to stay in the spotlight. But the real issue now isn't silence, it's attention. Because if people stop listening, that changes everything. And that, more than any headline, any book, any deal falling apart, or any product that didn't sell, might be the real pressure building behind the scenes. If you made it this far, drop your thoughts below. I want to hear what you think about all of this. And don't forget to subscribe and share this with someone who needs to see it.